The String of Innocence. On all the roads around Fairville, the peasants and their wives were heading to the town, for it was market day. The men walked slowly, their whole bodies leaning forward with each movement of their long, twisted legs, deformed by hard labor, by the pressure of the plow that also raised the left shoulder and twisted the waist, by the harvesting of wheat that forced the knees to spread for a firm stance, by all the slow and painful tasks of the countryside. Their blue smocks, stiff and shiny like varnished, adorned at the collar and cuffs with a small white thread design, puffed around their bony torsos and seemed like balloons ready to take off, from which a head, 2 arms, and 2 feet protruded. Some were leading a cow or a calf by a rope, and their wives, behind the beast, whipped its flanks with a branch still covered with leaves to hasten its pace. They carried large baskets on their arms, from which chicken heads occasionally poked out, and they walked with shorter, quicker steps than their men, their lean and straight bodies encased in a small shawl that flattened their chests, their heads encased in a white kerchief glued to their hair and topped with a bonnet. Then, a cart passed by, with the jarring trot of a nag, strangely shaking 2 men sitting side by side and a woman at the back of the vehicle, holding onto the edge to cushion the rough jolts. In the square of Fairville, there was a crowd, a tumult of men and beasts mixed together. The horns of oxen, the tall hats with long hair of the wealthy peasants, and the bonnets of the peasant women emerged above the assembly, and the sharp, shrill, piercing voices formed a continuous and wild buzzing, sometimes dominated by a loud burst of laughter from a robust peasant's chest, or by the prolonged mooing of a cow tied to the facade of a house. Everything smelled of the barn, milk and manure, hay and sweat, exhaling that acrid, abominable human and animal odor specific to country people. Master Smith of Greenwood had just arrived in Fairville and was heading towards the square when he noticed a small piece of string on the ground. Master Smith, frugal like a true Norman, thought that everything is good to pick up when it can be used, and he bent down painfully, for he suffered from rheumatism. He picked up the thin piece of string and was about to carefully wrap it up when he noticed Master Brown, the harness maker, watching him from his door. They had had a quarrel over a halter in the past, and they had remained on bad terms, both being resentful. Master Smith felt a sense of shame at being seen by his enemy rummaging in the dirt for a piece of string. He quickly hid his find under his smock, then in his trouser pocket. Then, he pretended to search again on the ground for something he could not find, and he walked off towards the market, head down, bent in two by his pains. He immediately lost himself in the noisy, slow crowd, agitated by endless bargaining. The peasants felt the cows, moved away, came back, perplexed, always fearing to be deceived, never daring to decide, spying on the seller's eye, endlessly seeking to detect the man's cunning and the beast's defect. The women, having set their large baskets at their feet, took out their poultry, which they threw to the ground, their legs tied, their eyes startled, their combs red. They listened to the offers, maintained their prices, looking dry and impassive, or suddenly, deciding on the proposed discount, shouted to the slowly departing customer, "It's settled, Master John. I'll give it to you." Then, little by little, the square emptied, and with the Angelus ringing at noon, those who lived too far away spread out to the inns. At Jourdain's, the large hall was full of eaters, as the vast courtyard was full of vehicles of all kinds, carts, buggies, benches, tilburys, nameless carriages, yellow with mud, deformed, patched, raising their shafts to the sky like 2 arms, or with their noses to the ground and their rears in the air. Close to the seated diners, the immense fireplace, full of bright flames, sent a strong heat to the row on the right. 3 spits turned, loaded with chickens, pigeons, and legs of lamb, and a delectable smell of roasting meat and dripping juices wafted from the hearth, igniting gaiety, moistening mouths. All the plough aristocracy ate there, at Master Jourdain's, innkeeper and horse dealer, a shrewd man who had coins. The dishes passed, emptied like the pitchers of yellow cider. Everyone talked about their business, their purchases, and sales. They took news of the crops. The weather was good for the greens, but a little cold for the wheat. Suddenly, the drum rolled in the courtyard, in front of the house. Immediately, everyone stood up, except for a few indifferent ones, and they ran to the door, to the windows, mouths still full and napkins in hand. After finishing his drum roll, the public crier launched in a jerky voice, punctuating his sentences off-beat. It is hereby announced to the inhabitants of Fairville and to all those present at the market that a black leather wallet was lost this morning on the Boozeville Road between 9 and 10 o'clock, containing 500 francs and business papers. Please return it to the town hall immediately or to Master Johnson of Manaville. A reward of 20 francs is offered. Then the man left. Once again, the dull beats of the drum and the weakening voice of the crier were heard in the distance. Then people started talking about this event, enumerating the chances Master Johnson had of finding or not finding his wallet. The meal ended. They were finishing their coffee when the sergeant of the gendarmerie appeared at the door. He asked, "Master Smith of Greenwood, are you here?" Master Smith, sitting at the other end of the table, replied, "Here I am." And the sergeant continued, "Master Smith, would you be kind enough to accompany me to the town hall? The mayor would like to speak with you." The peasant, surprised and worried, gulped down his small glass, stood up and more hunched than in the morning, for the first steps after each rest were particularly difficult, started off repeating, "Here I am, here I am," and he followed the sergeant. The mayor was waiting for him, seated in an armchair. He was the town's notary, a large man, serious, with pompous phrases. "Master Smith," he said, "you were seen this morning picking up the wallet lost by Master Johnson of Manaville on the Boozeville Road." The peasant, taken aback, looked at the mayor, already frightened by the suspicion that weighed on him, without understanding why. Me, picking up the wallet?" "Yes, you yourself." "By God, I didn't even know about it." "You were seen." "Seen me? Who saw me?" "Mr. Brown, the harness maker." Then the old man remembered, understood, and reddening with anger said, "Ah, he saw me, that scoundrel. He saw me picking up this string here, Mr. Mayor." And digging into his pocket, he pulled out the little piece of string. But the mayor, incredulous, shook his head. "You won't make me believe, Master Smith, that Mr. Brown, a man of good faith, mistook this string for a wallet." The peasant, furious, raised his hand, spat to the side to attest his honor, repeating, "Yet it's the truth, the holy truth, Mr. Mayor. Here, on my soul and my salvation, I swear it." The mayor resumed, "After picking up the object, you still searched for a long time in the mud to see if any coins had fallen out." The old man, suffocating with indignation and fear, said, "Who can say? Who can say? Lies like that to tarnish an honest man, who can say?" He protested in vain. He was not believed. He was confronted with Mr. Brown, who repeated and maintained his assertion. They insulted each other for an hour. At his request, Master Smith was searched. Nothing was found on him. Finally, the mayor, very perplexed, dismissed him, warning him that he would notify the court and seek orders. The news spread. As he left the town hall, the old man was surrounded, questioned with serious or mocking curiosity, but without any indignation. And he began to tell the story of the string. He was not believed. They laughed. He went, stopped by everyone, stopping his acquaintances, endlessly repeating his story and protests, showing his turned-out pockets to prove he had nothing. They said to him, "Cunning old man, eh?" And he got angry, exasperated, feverish, and desolate at not being believed, not knowing what to do, always recounting his story. Night came. He had to leave. He set off with 3 neighbors to whom he showed the place where he had picked up the piece of string, and all along the way he talked about his adventure. That evening he made a tour of Greenwood Village to tell everyone about it. He met only skeptics. He was ill all night. The next day, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Marius Brown, farmhand for Master Taylor, a farmer in Plumville, returned the wallet and its contents to Master Johnson of Manaville. This man claimed to have found it on the road, but not knowing how to read, he had carried it home and handed it to his boss only that day. The news spread around the village. Master Smith was informed. He immediately set off, triumphant, shouting to his wife, "I'm going to explain it to them, to the idiots!" He met people already discussing the event and began to recount his case. They let him speak and laughed at him. He was angry, choking with rage, not knowing what to say, continually starting over, never managing to convince the incredulous. He was livid with grief and anger. He felt himself the victim of an injustice, and it was eating at him. Then he started recounting the intricacies of his story, lengthening his explanations, swearing on his honor, inventing proof, finally becoming eloquent. He thought, "The important thing is that they know and convince themselves of my honesty." He wandered around, continually speaking to new people, stopping his acquaintances, repeating over and over. The tale of his string began to amuse them. People laughed at it. He sensed it, devoured by pain and shame, especially because he, a man of acknowledged probity, had a false reputation that tormented him. He then told his story endlessly, growing in importance with each account, amplifying it, becoming more passionate and eloquent. But people began to make fun of him. They laughed when he passed by. They joked, "Hey, it's the string man!" He suffered terribly. He became furious, boiling with anger, and retold his story endlessly, day and night. His mind weakened. At the end of December, he took to his bed. He died early in January, and in his delirium he repeated, "A little piece of string, a little piece of string. Look, here it is, Mr. Mayor.